There's a sound that Beatrice will never forget. The soft click of a bathroom door handle, turning slowly in the middle of the night. She was humming quietly to herself, completely unaware. The person standing just outside that door was someone she trusted, someone her family trusted, someone who had offered her a place to stay when she needed it most. But what Beatrice didn't know was that he had been watching her, studying her routines, planning, waiting for the perfect moment. The person Beatrice trusted most in that house was the one who had already crossed the line long before stepping into that hallway. And on that night, everything she thought she knew about safety, about family, about trust, shattered in an instant. This is a story that needs to be told, not because it's easy to hear, but because it happens more often than we want to believe. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, about 1/3 of all child sexual abuse cases involve a family member. But what many people don't realize is that betrayal doesn't stop in childhood. It can happen at any age, in any home, behind any door. Today, you're going to hear the full story of Beatrice, a 22-year-old woman whose life changed forever because she made a decision that most of us would make. She trusted a family member. This story has twists no one expects, silence that enabled harm, and a question we all need to ask ourselves. How far can manipulation hide inside a family before someone finally sees it? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand why speaking up is the only way forward. Before we continue, let me know in the comments, should families be held to a higher legal standard when they betray trust like this? Beatrice was the kind of person people loved being around. She had this bright energy about her, always smiling, always making time for friends and family, even when her schedule was packed. At 22, she was in her final year of college, studying early childhood education because she wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. She'd seen firsthand how one caring teacher could change everything for a struggling student, and she wanted to be that person for someone else. Her mother, Linda, was her best friend. They talked almost every day, shared everything, laughed at the same jokes. Linda had raised Beatrice on her own after Beatrice's father passed away when she was just 7. They had a bond that felt unbreakable. But college was expensive, and even with financial aid, Beatrice was struggling to make rent while keeping up with her classes and part-time job at a local bookstore. She was exhausted, stressed, and running out of options. That's when her mother suggested something that seemed like the perfect solution. Linda's older brother, Jude, had recently moved into a spacious 3-bedroom house just 20 minutes from Beatrice's campus. He was in his mid-40s, worked as an accountant, kept to himself mostly. He'd always been the family's go-to guy, the reliable one, the one who showed up when someone needed help. Linda called him, explained the situation, and Jude didn't hesitate. Of course she can stay here. I've got the space and I love the company. Family helps family. Beatrice moved in 2 weeks later. At first, everything felt normal. Jude was polite, maybe a little too polite. He'd always offer to help her carry groceries, ask her how her classes were going, check if she needed anything. He was soft-spoken, never raised his voice, went to church every Sunday. He'd talk about his faith a lot, about how important it was to take care of family, to protect the ones you love. Beatrice appreciated it. She felt safe. But there were small moments, little things that didn't seem important at the time that made her pause. Like when Jude would knock on her bedroom door and then open it before she could say, "Come in." Or when he'd comment on what she was wearing, saying things like, "That's a nice dress, really brings out your figure," with a smile that lingered just a bit too long. Or when he'd offer to drive her to campus, even though she had her own car, insisting it was no trouble, that he wanted to make sure she got there safely. Beatrice brushed it off. He's just being protective, she told herself. He's family. He's trying to help. But deep down, something felt off. She just couldn't put her finger on it. To the outside world, Jude was a model citizen. His coworkers described him as dependable, quiet, someone who kept his head down and did his job well. His neighbors saw him as friendly but private, the kind of guy who'd wave hello but never lingered for long conversations. At church, he was known as generous, always volunteering for community events, always ready to lend a hand. People respected him, trusted him. But behind closed doors, Jude was someone entirely different. He was controlling in ways that were hard to notice at first, disguising his behavior as concern. He'd ask Beatrice detailed questions about her day, where she'd been, who she'd talked to, what time she'd be home. If she said she was going out with friends, he'd text her an hour later asking if everything was okay, if she needed him to pick her up, if she felt safe. At first, Beatrice thought it was sweet, but then it started to feel suffocating. He began making little rules. Just let me know before you have anyone over, okay? I like to keep the house secure. Try not to come home too late. I worry about you driving at night. You should really spend more time here. It's safer. Jude also started volunteering to drive her places more often, even when she didn't ask. He'd insist on taking her to the grocery store, to campus, to appointments, and every time they were in the car together, he'd steer the conversation toward personal topics, relationships, past boyfriends, what she found attractive in a man. Beatrice would change the subject, laugh it off, give short answers, but Jude kept pushing. What Beatrice didn't know was that Jude had been keeping track of her, not just mentally, but actually writing things down. In a small notebook hidden in his desk drawer, he'd logged her daily routines, what time she woke up, when she showered, how long she stayed in the bathroom, what days she went to the gym, when she came home late. He told himself it was just so he could look out for her, so he could make sure she was safe. But the truth was darker than that. Jude was obsessed, and with every passing week, that obsession was growing stronger. About 6 weeks after Beatrice moved in, she started noticing things that didn't add up. Small things, but unsettling. One morning, she walked into her bedroom and felt like something was different. Her dresser drawers weren't closed all the way. Her laptop, which she always left on her desk at a specific angle, had been moved slightly. Her laundry basket, which she kept in the corner by her closet, was now closer to the door. She stood there, staring, trying to convince herself she was imagining it. Maybe she had just forgotten. Maybe she had been in a rush that morning. But the feeling wouldn't go away. Then there was the bathroom. Beatrice had a routine. Every night before bed, she'd lock the bathroom door, take a shower, and leave the small window above the toilet cracked open just a bit to let the steam out. But twice in a week, she came out of the shower to find the window wide open, even though she was sure she'd only opened it a crack. She asked Jude about it once, casually, trying not to sound paranoid. "Hey, did you open the bathroom window earlier? It was wide open when I got out of the shower." Jude looked at her with this calm, almost blank expression and said, "No, I didn't go in there. Maybe you opened it more than you thought." Beatrice nodded, but she didn't believe him. And then there were the compliments. At first, they were harmless. "You look nice today. That color suits you." But they started to shift, becoming more personal, more inappropriate. "You've got a really beautiful figure, you know that? I bet guys can't keep their eyes off you when you're out. You should be careful. A girl like you, people notice." Beatrice started to feel uncomfortable in her own skin. She'd wear baggy clothes around the house, avoid being alone with Jude in common areas, spend more time in her room with the door locked. But Jude noticed, and it made him angry. One night, she came home around 10 p.m. after studying with friends at the library. Jude was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Where were you?" he asked. "I was at the library. I told you this morning," Beatrice said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You didn't text me when you got there." "I didn't think I had to?" "I worry about you, Beatrice. You're living under my roof. The least you could do is keep me informed." She felt her chest tighten. "I'm 22, Jude. I appreciate you letting me stay here, but I don't need to report every move I make." Jude stood up, took a step toward her, and for the first time, Beatrice saw something in his eyes that genuinely scared her. It wasn't just anger. It was something colder, more dangerous. "You're right," he said quietly, his voice eerily calm. "You don't have to do anything. But don't forget, I'm doing you a favor." Then he walked past her, so close she could feel the heat coming off his body, and went to his room. Beatrice locked herself in her bedroom that night and called her best friend, Maya. "Something is off," she whispered into the phone. "I can't explain it, but something is really wrong here." "Then leave," Maya said. "Come stay with me." "I can't. I don't have anywhere else to go. And if I tell my mom, she'll freak out, and I don't even know what I'd say. He hasn't done anything concrete. It's just a feeling." But it wasn't just a feeling, and Maya knew it. "Beatrice, trust your gut, please." Beatrice said she would, but she didn't leave. And that decision, that hesitation, would haunt her for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, Jude was listening. He'd been standing just outside her door the entire time, ear pressed against the wood, hearing every word. And later that night, when Beatrice's mother sent her a text asking how things were going, Jude saw the notification pop up on the kitchen counter where Beatrice had left her phone charging. He picked it up, unlocked it using the passcode he'd memorized from watching her type it in, and deleted the message before Beatrice ever saw it. He didn't want her to leave, not yet, not until he got what he wanted. It was a Thursday night, 3 months after Beatrice had moved in, and the tension in the house had reached a breaking point. Beatrice had been avoiding Jude as much as possible, spending most of her time at campus or at Maya's apartment, only coming home to sleep. But that night, she got home earlier than usual because she had an exam the next morning and needed a quiet place to study. Jude was in the kitchen when she walked in, making dinner. He looked up and smiled, that same calm, unsettling smile he always had. "Hey, Bea, you hungry? I made extra." "No thanks," she said quickly, heading toward her room. "Beatrice, wait!" She stopped, turned around. "I feel like we haven't really talked in a while," Jude said, stepping closer. "I know things have been a little tense, and I just want to make sure we're good. You know I care about you, right?" "Yeah, I know," she said, forcing a smile. "I just have a lot going on with school." "I get that, but you've been spending a lot of time away from here. It makes me feel like, I don't know, like you don't want to be around me anymore." Beatrice felt her stomach twist. "It's not that, Jude. I'm just busy." "Are you seeing someone?" The question caught her completely off guard. "What? Are you seeing someone? A boyfriend?" That's none of your business," Beatrice said, her voice sharper than she intended. Jude's expression changed. The smile disappeared. His eyes darkened. "I'm just trying to look out for you. You're living in my house, and I have a right to know who you're spending time with. I don't want some guy taking advantage of you." "I can take care of myself." "Clearly you can't, or you wouldn't be living here." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She stared at him, stunned, and then turned and walked to her room without another word. She slammed the door, locked it, and sat on her bed, shaking. She pulled out her phone and texted Maya. "I need to get out of here. Can I stay with you this weekend?" Maya replied immediately, "Yes, come now." But she didn't. She convinced herself she just needed to get through the night, take her exam in the morning, and then she'd pack a bag and leave. Just one more night, she thought. I can do one more night. But Jude had heard the door slam. He stood in the hallway, fists clenched, breathing hard. He wasn't angry anymore. He was something worse. He was decided. Later that night, around 11:30 p.m., Beatrice got up to use the bathroom. She'd been studying for hours, her eyes were burning, and she needed to wash her face and get ready for bed. She grabbed her towel, walked down the hallway, and stepped into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. She didn't lock it. She never did when she was just washing her face. That was her mistake. Jude had been waiting. He'd been sitting in the dark living room, watching the light under her bedroom door, listening for movement. When he heard her footsteps in the hallway, he stood up, his heart racing, adrenaline flooding his system. This was it. This was the moment he'd been thinking about for weeks. He moved quietly down the hallway, careful not to make a sound, and stopped just outside the bathroom door. He could hear the water running, hear her humming softly to herself. And then he reached for the handle. Beatrice was leaning over the sink, washing her face when she heard it, the soft click of the door handle turning. She looked up, water dripping from her face, and saw the door slowly opening. Jude stepped inside. For a moment, neither of them moved. Beatrice froze, her mind struggling to process what was happening. "Jude, what are you doing?" she said, her voice shaking. "Get out!" He didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at her, his eyes moving over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. She was wearing shorts and a tank top, nothing revealing, but the way he looked at her made her feel completely exposed. "Jude, I said get out!" He took another step closer. "I just wanted to talk." "Not here! Not now! Get out!" But he didn't move. Instead, he reached behind him and closed the door. The sound of it clicking shut echoed through the small room like a gunshot. Beatrice's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. Every instinct in her body was screaming at her to run, but there was nowhere to go. He was blocking the only exit. "You've been avoiding me," Jude said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I don't like being ignored, Beatrice." "I'm not ignoring you, I'm just—" "Jude, please, just leave." "I've done so much for you," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "I gave you a place to stay. I've been nothing but kind to you, and you treat me like some kind of monster." "I don't think you're a monster. Please, Jude, you're scaring me." "Good," he said, and something in his voice made her blood run cold. "Maybe you should be scared. Maybe that's what it takes to get through to you." He took another step forward, and Beatrice pressed herself back against the sink, trapped.
Her mind was racing, searching for a way out, but her body felt frozen, paralyzed by fear. "You're so beautiful," Jude said, reaching out to touch her face. Beatrice jerked away, her voice breaking. "Don't touch me!" "Why not? I've been watching you for months. I know you feel it too." "I don't feel anything. You need to leave. Right now." But instead of leaving, Jude moved even closer. So close she could smell the cologne he always wore. So close she could see the veins in his neck pulsing. And that's when Beatrice realized something that made her stomach drop. This wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to leave. She had two choices: fight or freeze. She chose to fight. With every ounce of strength she had, Beatrice shoved him as hard as she could, catching him off guard. He stumbled backward just enough for her to slip past him and grab the door handle. She yanked it open and ran. She ran down the hallway, into her bedroom, slammed the door and locked it. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely turn the lock, but she managed, and then she stood there, back pressed against the door, chest heaving, tears streaming down her face. She could hear Jude on the other side, breathing heavily. "Beatrice," he said, his voice eerily calm now. "Open the door. We need to talk about this." "Stay away from me," she screamed. "Stay the hell away from me." There was a long silence, and then she heard his footsteps, slow and deliberate, walking away down the hallway. But she didn't move. She stayed there, frozen, listening, waiting, terrified that he'd come back. Beatrice didn't sleep that night. She sat on her bed, back against the headboard, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the door. Every sound made her jump. Every creak of the house sent a fresh wave of panic through her body. She kept replaying the moment over and over in her mind, the look in his eyes, the way he touched her face, the way he said, "Maybe you should be scared." She felt like she was going to throw up. Around 6 in the morning, when the sun finally started to rise, she heard movement in the hallway. Footsteps. Jude was awake. She held her breath, waiting, praying he wouldn't knock on her door. But he didn't. Instead, she heard him walk past her room, down the hallway, and into the kitchen. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock. "Beatrice?" His voice was calm, casual, like nothing had happened. "I made coffee. Do you want some?" She didn't respond. "I know last night was a misunderstanding. I think we just need to talk about it. Clear the air." A misunderstanding. The word made her want to scream. "Beatrice, come on. Don't make this a bigger deal than it needs to be. You know I'd never hurt you. I was just trying to talk to you, and you overreacted. I think you owe me an apology, honestly." An apology. He wanted her to apologize. She felt something inside her shift. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something else was rising. Anger. "Beatrice, if you tell anyone about this, no one's going to believe you. You know that, right? I'm the one who took you in. I'm the one who's been helping you. Who do you think people are going to believe? A 22-year-old girl who's been stressed out and emotional, or me?" Silence. "Think about your mom. Think about what this would do to her. She's my sister. Do you really want to tear this family apart over nothing?" Beatrice pressed her hands over her ears, trying to block out his voice, but it kept seeping through. And then finally, she heard him walk away. She waited another hour just to be sure he was gone, and then she grabbed her phone, her keys, her wallet, and a small backpack with a change of clothes. She didn't pack anything else. She just needed to get out. She opened her bedroom door slowly, peeking out into the hallway. The house was silent. Jude's car was gone. He'd left for work. Beatrice walked quickly to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped outside. The morning air hit her face, cold and sharp, and she sucked in a breath, filling her lungs, feeling the weight on her chest lift just slightly. She got in her car, started the engine, and drove. She didn't know where she was going at first. She just drove. And then, almost on autopilot, she found herself pulling into the parking lot of Maya's apartment complex. She sat in the car for a moment, staring at the building, and then she broke down. The sobs came hard and fast, racking her entire body, and she couldn't stop them. She cried for 10 minutes, maybe longer, until there was nothing left. And then she got out of the car, walked up to Maya's door, and knocked. Maya opened the door, took one look at Beatrice's face, and pulled her inside. "What happened?" Beatrice couldn't speak. She just shook her head, tears streaming down her face again, and Maya wrapped her arms around her and held her tight. "It's okay. You're safe now. You're safe." But what neither of them knew was that Jude had been more careful than they realized. He'd tried to delete the security camera footage from the hallway outside the bathroom. He'd logged into the system, erased the files from the main hard drive, thinking that was enough. But what he didn't know was that the camera was connected to a cloud backup service, a service that automatically uploaded footage every night. And the video of him entering the bathroom and Beatrice running out moments later was saved, waiting. Beatrice stayed at Maya's apartment for 2 days, barely eating, barely sleeping, just trying to process what had happened. Maya's older sister Claire was a nurse at a local hospital, and when she came by to check on Beatrice, she sat down next to her on the couch and spoke gently. "Beatrice, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did he hurt you?" Beatrice shook her head. He didn't. I got out before he could. But he tried." Beatrice nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know this is hard. I know you probably don't want to talk about it, but what he did was not okay. It was assault, and if you don't report it, he's going to do it to someone else." "I can't," she whispered. "He's my uncle, my mom's brother. If I tell her, it'll destroy her. And he said no one's going to believe me." "I believe you," Claire said firmly, "and your mom will believe you, and the police will believe you. But you have to speak up. You have to." Maya sat down on Beatrice's other side and took her hand. "You didn't do anything wrong," she said. "None of this is your fault, and you owe him nothing. Not silence, not protection, nothing." It took another full day before Beatrice finally agreed to make the call. Maya sat with her while she called her mother. The conversation was one of the hardest things Beatrice had ever done. Linda answered on the second ring. "Bea, honey, where have you been? Jude said you left a couple days ago and haven't been answering your phone. I've been worried sick." "Mom, I need to tell you something." There was a pause. Linda's voice shifted, becoming quieter, more cautious. "What's wrong?" Beatrice took a deep breath and told her everything. The weird comments, the boundary violations, the night in the bathroom, the threats. And for a long, terrible moment, there was only silence on the other end of the line. "Mom?" Beatrice said, her voice breaking. "Say something, please." And then Linda spoke, and her voice was shaking with a mixture of rage and grief. "I'm coming to get you, right now, and we're going to the police." "I don't know if I can." "Yes, you can, and you will, because I'm not letting him get away with this."
Do you hear me? I'm not letting him hurt you and walk away like nothing happened. 2 hours later, Linda arrived at Maya's apartment. She hugged Beatrice so tightly it hurt. And then the three of them, Linda, Beatrice, and Maya, drove to the police station together. Beatrice gave her statement. It was long, detailed, and exhausting. The officer taking the report was kind, patient, and took everything seriously. And when Beatrice mentioned that Jude had security cameras in the house, the officer's eyes lit up. "Do you know if those cameras are still recording?" "I think so," Beatrice said. "But he probably deleted the footage." "Maybe," the officer said, "but let's find out." They got a warrant. 2 days later, police went to Jude's house and seized his security system. And that's when they found it. The cloud backup. The footage that Jude thought he'd erased. The video showed everything. Jude standing outside the bathroom door, hesitating, then entering. Beatrice, moments later, running out, visibly distressed. It was all there. But that wasn't the only thing they found. When investigators dug deeper into Jude's background, they discovered something that made everyone's blood run cold. 15 years ago, another woman had accused Jude of inappropriate behavior. She was a co-worker, and she'd reported that Jude had followed her into a woman's restroom at their office, claiming he just wanted to talk. The case had been investigated, but ultimately dismissed due to lack of evidence. The woman had been pressured by HR to drop it, told it would be her word against his, and that pursuing it would only hurt her career. So she'd stayed silent. But now, with Beatrice's case moving forward, that woman came forward again. Her name was kept confidential, but her testimony was powerful. She described the same pattern of behavior, the boundary violations, the manipulation, the threats. And suddenly it became clear. Jude wasn't just a man who made one mistake. He was a predator. And Beatrice wasn't his first victim. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. Police showed up at Jude's office, walked him out in handcuffs in front of all his co-workers, and charged him with attempted sexual assault, invasion of privacy, and harassment. The news spread through the family like wildfire, and the reactions were divided. Some family members, including Linda's younger sister, Aunt Monica, immediately stood by Beatrice. "I believe her," Monica said. "I've always thought there was something off about Jude. I just never said anything." But others weren't so supportive. Jude's mother, Beatrice's grandmother, refused to believe it. "He would never do something like that," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "Beatrice is confused. She's stressed from school. She's making this up." "She's not making it up, Mom," Linda said, her voice shaking. "There's video evidence. There's another victim. How can you still defend him?" "Because he's my son, and I know him." "He's not," Linda said, tears streaming down her face. "He's not, and you need to accept that." The family fractured. Some members stopped speaking to each other. Thanksgiving and Christmas that year were canceled. Beatrice felt the weight of it all pressing down on her, the guilt, the shame, even though she knew intellectually that none of it was her fault. But knowing something and feeling it are two very different things. The legal process was slow and brutal. Jude hired an expensive lawyer who tried every tactic in the book. He claimed Beatrice had misunderstood his intentions, that she'd been struggling emotionally and had imagined the whole thing, that the video didn't actually show what the prosecution claimed it showed. But the evidence was too strong. The cloud backup footage was clear. The testimony from the previous victim was damning. And when investigators found Jude's notebook, the one where he'd been logging Beatrice's routines, it sealed this fate. The defense tried to argue that the notebook was just Jude being concerned about his niece's safety, but the jury didn't buy it. The trial lasted 3 weeks.
Beatrice had to take the stand and recount everything that happened that night. She had to look at Jude, sitting just a few feet away, while she described the way he looked at her, the way he touched her face, the way he threatened her. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done. But she did it. And when the verdict came back, guilty on all counts, Beatrice felt something she hadn't felt in months. Relief. Jude was sentenced to 8 years in prison. It wasn't as long as Beatrice had hoped for, but it was something. And more importantly, his name was now on the sex offender registry. He would never be able to hurt anyone the way he hurt her and that woman from 15 years ago ever again. But the damage was done. The family was broken. Beatrice's relationship with her grandmother never recovered. And even though Linda stood by her daughter every step of the way, Beatrice could see the pain in her mother's eyes. The pain of realizing that someone she trusted, someone she loved, had been a monster all along. Before we go to the final twist and the outcome of this case, let me know in the comments, do you believe families often protect the wrong person in situations like this? I want to hear your thoughts. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Months after the trial ended, Beatrice started therapy. It was hard at first. She didn't want to talk about what happened. She didn't want to relive it over and over again. But her therapist was patient, and slowly, Beatrice started to heal. She joined a support group for survivors of sexual assault, and for the first time since that night, she didn't feel alone. She met other women who had been through similar experiences, who understood the fear, the shame, the guilt that came with it. And hearing their stories, sharing her own, helped her realize something important. What happened to her wasn't her fault. She hadn't done anything wrong. She trusted someone she was supposed to be able to trust, and he was the one who violated that trust, not her. She moved into a small apartment with Maya, finished her degree, and got a job as a teacher's assistant at an elementary school. Life wasn't perfect, but it was hers again. She was rebuilding. And then, almost a year after the trial, something happened that no one saw coming. Beatrice got a phone call from the prosecutor who'd handled her case. "Beatrice, I need to tell you something, and I want you to hear it from me before it hits the news." "What is it?" "Another family member has come forward. Your aunt, Monica." Beatrice's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "She came into the station yesterday. She told us that years ago, when she was in her 20s and staying at Jude's apartment for a few months, she saw signs. She saw him watching her in ways that made her uncomfortable. She saw him going through her things. She confronted him once and he got angry, defensive, told her she was imagining things, but she knew something was wrong, and she didn't say anything." The prosecutor paused. "She wanted me to tell you something. She said she's sorry. She said she knows it doesn't change anything, but she wanted you to know that she's sorry and that she's proud of you for being braver than she ever was." Beatrice hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time. She didn't know how to feel. Part of her was angry.
Angry that someone had seen the signs, had known Jude was dangerous, and had stayed silent. Part of her was sad. Sad for Monica, who'd been carrying that guilt for years. And part of her was relieved, because Monica's confession confirmed something Beatrice had always suspected but never wanted to admit. Jude had been dangerous for a long time, and if people had spoken up sooner, maybe none of this would have happened. The story broke a few days later. Monica gave an interview to a local news station, speaking openly about her experience and her regret. "I stayed silent because I didn't want to destroy the family," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But my silence enabled a predator. It allowed him to hurt Beatrice, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life." Her confession sent shockwaves through the community. People started asking questions. How many other victims were there? How many other people had seen signs but stayed quiet? How many families were protecting predators in the name of keeping the peace? Monica's interview went viral online, shared thousands of times, and sparked a nationwide conversation about the culture of silence that protects abusers within families.
Beatrice watched the interview alone in her apartment, tears rolling down her cheeks. She didn't know if she could forgive Monica. Maybe one day. But right now, all she felt was a deep, aching sadness. Sadness for herself. Sadness for the woman from 15 years ago. Sadness for anyone else who might have been hurt along the way. But underneath that sadness, there was something else. Something stronger. Determination. Beatrice decided that she wasn't going to let this story end with silence. She wasn't going to let her trauma define her. Instead, she was going to use it. Use it to help others. Use it to make sure that what happened to her didn't happen to someone else. 6 months later, Beatrice started speaking at schools, community centers, and support groups. She talked about her experience, about the warning signs she'd missed, about the importance of trusting your instincts, and about the power of speaking up even when it's terrifying. She partnered with organizations that work to prevent sexual violence and trained young people on how to recognize grooming behavior and boundary violations. Her mother, Linda, became an advocate too. She spoke openly about the guilt she felt for not seeing the signs earlier, for trusting her brother without question, for not protecting her daughter the way she should have. "I failed Beatrice," Linda said in one interview. "I put her in that house. I told her she'd be safe, and I was wrong. But I'm not going to fail anyone else. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure people know that predators don't always look like strangers. They look like family. They look like friends. They look like people you trust." And slowly, painfully, the family began to heal. Not all of it. Some relationships were broken beyond repair. But Linda and Beatrice, they became even closer. They became a team. And together, they turned their pain into purpose. Jude, meanwhile, sat in prison. He never apologized, never admitted what he'd done. He still claimed he was innocent, that he'd been wrongly convicted, that Beatrice had ruined his life. But no one was listening anymore. The world had moved on. And Beatrice was finally free. This story is hard to hear. I know that. But it's a story that needs to be told because it happens every single day. Predators hide in plain sight. They hide behind reputations, behind family ties, behind trust. And the reason they get away with it for so long is because people stay silent, because families protect the wrong person, because victims are too scared to speak up. So let me ask you this. If you saw the signs, would you say something? Would you risk the discomfort, the awkwardness, the family drama to protect someone? Or would you stay quiet and hope it goes away? Because here's the truth. Silence enables harm. It always has. And the only way to stop predators is to stop protecting them. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. If someone makes you uncomfortable, you don't owe them an explanation or your time. You don't owe anyone access to your body or your space. And if someone violates your boundaries, it is not your fault. It is never your fault. To the survivors watching this, I see you. I believe you. And I'm so sorry for what you went through. You are not alone. You are not broken. And you are so much stronger than you know. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your comment might be the encouragement someone else needs. And if you want more real stories that spread awareness and protect others, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for caring enough to stay until the end. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's break the silence together.